listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
What's up, everyone? How you been? Hope you're all okay. As always, I'm your host, Rob Lane, and this is my Straight to Video podcast. Now, I realise episodes are a little sporadic right now, but it's tough out there in the podcast world. I've been chatting with my buddy Chuck Shute, whose show has been a massive inspiration to mine, and we both agreed how hard things are right now. There's so many new shows that it's really tough to stand out, so I think we're both in a similar position, and I kind of hope it's the right one. We just want to do shows with people we really want to speak to, and that way you know you're going to get a fun show which you want to return to, and today's is certainly one of those. It's a double win for me to speak to today's guest, actor and voice artist Charlie Schlatter. Not only do I get to do a great chat and hear some awesome stories, because Charlie has had an incredible career, but he's also going to be a guest at our 80s video shop in Alverton, Derbyshire in just a couple of weeks. He'll be meeting fans, signing autographs and taking photos, along with doing an intro to one of his own films which ticket holders get to choose. This is all happening on Saturday the 31st of May, so only a couple of weeks away, pop it in your diary. So who is Charlie Schlatter? That's been a really cool thing for me to find out, as whilst I know some of his movies such as 18 Again with George Burns, The Delinquents with Kylie Minogue and the Chris Columbus movie Heartbreak Hotel, plus he played Ferris Bueller in the TV series of the John Hughes classic. I wasn't aware of his work on the long-running TV show Diagnosis Murder with Dick Van Dyke, but that's the one thing that really gets people excited when I mention it, so it's going to be really cool to see people's reactions when he visits the shop. Charlie has also become an incredibly sought-after cartoon voice artist, working on things such as The Flash, Kick Buttowski and many other popular cartoons, and more recently he earned the role of none other than E.T The Extra Terrestrial when he voiced the legendary alien in the Xfinity Sky TV holiday reunion short just a few years ago. That one kind of blew my mind. Charlie was really fun to chat with, one of those dream guests who right away you feel at ease with, and it was fun to talk a little music, as well as hearing some of the stories from his incredibly varied career. So I hope you enjoy it. So right now sit back and check out my straight to video chat with Charlie Schlatter.
Rob, it's happening.
Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, man. What kind of bass you got back there?
Oh, that's my jazz bass. I've had it for, crikey, over 20 years now, I think.
Wow.
That's my go-to. I think it's now finally classed as vintage. It was brand new when I first got it, but it's probably vintage now.
I was going to say a lot of stuff. Yeah, I'm vintage. I think a lot of stuff that I own is now vintage, which is nice. I don't collect guitars, but I do have like some that I think are really great. And yeah, one of mine is just a Fender Stratocaster, vintage white. And yeah, I just love it. And then I also, years ago, I did this movie called Heartbreak Hotel, and they gave me this Fender Telecaster, red, pre-CBS. So it was like a 72 Telecaster. So it just sits on my wall.
Did you play that in the film? Was it screen used?
Yeah, totally. In fact, there's like a little bit of blood on the scratch board there because, yeah, it was just too hard.
Oh, man. I love that, though. So how you been doing? All right? Everything good?
Yeah, I'm totally good. I just got back from a little golf tournament, so that was nice. A nice couple days out in the desert. Now I'm just back at it, and I'm anxious to see you guys out there soon.
Oh, man, it's coming up fast. It seemed ages away. Now it's like right on top of us.
I know. Yes, like it's real.
Super excited to have you come and visit our 80s video shop in just a couple of weeks. When do you think was the last time you were actually in an actual video store?
Oh my God. That's a crazy question. Well, I don't know. I remember do you remember when Netflix first started? It was basically just like a mail order thing. You just get a DVD and you didn't have to go to the video store anymore. Like that was a chore, even though it was like a block away from where you lived, because there were Blockbusters everywhere. So gosh, the last time, oh my God, it had to be like probably early 90s. Because I remember I was like one of the first ones. I'm old, Rob. I used to have one of those big monster satellite dishes on my roof. That's like before DirecTV came about or anything like that. And you used to get like these really cool satellite feeds. Like I'm a big sports nut. So you would just get like a feed of the New York Giants just from like one camera that was on the field or something like that. And then you could always just find like crazy movies here and there. So that was like my first step away from having to go to video stores. And then, then it just became DirecTV and everything is just on demand. And same thing with music, as you know. I mean, you remember, I'm sure, like buying an album and like that was your day. Dude, you bought that album and you came home and you read the liner note, everything cover to cover, if it had the lyrics on it, and you just sat there with your big Koss headphones on and you just got lost.
I've mentioned this far too many times, but it still holds true. It's like everything is cool now. It's convenient. It's instant. But when a new album comes out, you don't remember when you click play on Spotify, but you remember back in the day when you went to the record store and brought that album.
I can't even tell you how many experiences I remember from that, from either buying an album or being a kid and getting an album for Christmas. I remember getting the first Foreigner album in like 1977, I think, or 78 as a Christmas gift. I totally remember. And then sometimes you'd pick up the other album and it was a double album. It was Lynyrd Skynyrd Gold and Platinum. It was the thick one, or Frampton Comes Alive. But yeah, it was exciting. And I have to say, I think it was the same thing like with movies as well. My wife will say to me, "Oh, you remember that movie we saw?" And I go, "Did I see it? I don't remember." Again, I don't know if I'm just losing my mind, but I really don't remember like 50% of the movies I see anymore. But I remember experiences from the movie theaters and movies that I stood in line to see.
The hype and the build-up.
The hype is weird these days because it's not even like really about the film. A lot of times it's about the shit that happened around the film.
Yeah.
The Blake Lively stuff that's going on, or
the new Snow White movie or something like that.
The Snow White thing. Yeah, like she said horrible things about what I don't know who said what about. Who cares? If a movie's good, it's good and you go see it.
But do you remember the first time you ever saw one of your own movies on a video store shelf? Or did you ever rent one of your own films?
I don't think I ever did. I don't think I ever rented one. I do remember okay, so here's something funny. Before I had done movies, there was a movie theater in my town called the Stanley Warner RKO or something. And right next to that movie theater was a video rental place, which I thought, God, that makes such great sense because a lot of times you go to a movie, it's sold out, and then, you just take a movie home. So really smart. In fact, there was a Blockbuster next to another movie theater. Anyway, this is like before I was in the movies. This is like a year or so before I had been in movies. And do you remember the kid from, oh God, he was in Author with Al Pacino. He played the son Igor. And then he was also in a movie called Bad Boys, the original one with Sean Penn, Clancy Brown, Esai Morales. So he was kind of like a fifth lead or whatever in that. And I had seen the movie. And I remember being in that video store and he was with some friends and they're like, whatever his name, Bob, hey, Bob, look, there's your movie, Bob. You're in that movie. And I was looking at this guy like, God, his friends are so obnoxious. Who cares? You're in a stupid movie. What a bunch of jerks. Cut to like a year later. I'm in the same situation with my friends and they're like, Schlatter, look, there's 18 again. And I was like, hey, just be cool, man. But it was weird, like to see, like a stack of your videos there. It was kind of crazy. And that was really like the first one I had seen was like the 18 again movie.
Even cooler if it was out on loan because you knew it was in demand.
Right. And it actually is like one of those movies that had like a really healthy video life, did really well on cable. It did okay in the box office, but it kind of had, it's one of those things that the afterlife just keeps going. It's like a rediscovery for people, which is nice. I do remember seeing myself for the first time in a movie, and that was odd because it was called Bright Lights, Big City with Michael J. Fox. I played his brother. But I just remember like, oh my God, my face is it's just weird to see like how big your face is and like why anybody hired me to do that.
Look at the size of him on that screen.
Right? He's a monster.
So was all this back out in New Jersey when you first started acting?
Yeah. In fact, I didn't even I kind of don't even think I moved out. I was going to college and then started doing movies. And then I kept thinking, I'll go back to college at some point. So I was never really like looking to break out or anything, but I just kind of done one thing after another. So I kept taking what's called a leave of absence at my college and then just basically packed a bigger suitcase and moved to LA where I kind of had to be. These days, maybe there's more to do in Jersey. Now we could be remote. We could be anywhere, which is the nice thing about life. We're all so connected. But back then, you really either, if you wanted to do theater, you basically had to be in New York. And if you wanted to be in movies or television, you had to kind of be in LA. And I just didn't like flying very much. So I'll stay in LA and I'll try it and see how it goes. And I didn't mind it. It was fine. But I never had that dream, Rob, of saying like, oh yeah, someday I want to be out in California. Or, I don't know. I think I just set the bar really low too. I never really had a plan. maybe that helped.
Everything that came along was a bonus. Like, this is cool. I'll try this.
And I'm still that way. You know what I mean? Even like with cartoons and stuff. I never planned on being in cartoons like that, but no, I love it.
So how far away was you from like New York and Manhattan?
8 miles to the George Washington Bridge. So right in like right there. Really close.
Was it ever like scary for you as a kid visiting such a big city, or was it something that just became normal during like the 70s and 80s?
I wasn't smart enough to be scared, and I probably should have been. You know, it's funny, like back then in New Jersey, you had to be 17 to get a driver's license. Many other places it's 16, but Jersey, it should be 30, but you had to be 17. But to drive in New York City proper, you had to be 18. And back then I looked like I was 12. So that was the only time I was scared, was like driving in New York thinking, oh God, I couldn't even see over the damn, I was so little. But no, I wasn't, I wasn't really scared. And also because I like worked in New York too. Mm-hmm. Many summers I worked at a AAA, which is the Automobile Club of America, Automobile Association of America. And I used to make triptychs. I used to make maps for people. And I worked right across the street from Madison Square Garden. And that was like from the age of like 15 to like 20, I think. So like maybe 5 summers I had done that. And so I always felt pretty safe in New York, although this was at a time when Times Square was like, it was really sketchy.
Is that when you met David Lee Roth?
I did, yeah. Yeah, he came into... And it's so funny because like you were on like a rotation schedule, like, okay, whoever's next gets the next customer, whatever. And David Lee Roth came in, and not everybody knew him either.
When was it? What year?
God, it's had to be 80, graduated high school in 84, probably like 85.
So he probably just left Van Halen at that point then, maybe?
No, I think he was still in Van Halen. I think that was still happening. It wasn't Sammy Hagar yet. Nevertheless, it was David Lee Roth. And he was like going to Ogunquit, Maine or somewhere up north, and I was the guy. I drew the straw. I was like, okay, here you go.
Wow.
Back then, we didn't have cameras, I mean, if you had a camera, it was home. You didn't have anything to document anything. I have pictures of nobody. Somebody asked me recently, they said, you must have like 1 million pictures with Dick Van Dyke. I think I have 2. Like one is at a rap party and one is on the set that somebody just happened to take of us. But we never sat there like, taking pictures of ourselves.
So being from New Jersey, so many amazing bands and musicians. Who was your favorite local heroes back then?
I was a big Bruce kid growing up. I loved the early stuff, the Greetings from Asbury Park. To me, that album is so great. And I love what Manfred Mann did with Blinded by the Light. To this day, it's still one of my favorite songs. I just think the arrangement is so freaking great. But I do love those original, Bruce tracks that he did. So I was a big Jersey guy, not a Bon Jovi guy.
No?
No, I don't get that accent. What part of Jersey are you from, John? Tommy used to work on the dock. What docks are we talking about in Jersey? Anyway, but there was a band, there was like a local band. They were so good. They used to play all the local bars all up and down Bergen County. And they were called the Nerds. And there's like other bands. There's other like types of that band. There's a band out here called the Spasmatics. And they're just club bands. They're cover bands. But this cover band was like so good. And they totally dressed up like Revenge of the Nerds with the taped glasses and all that stuff. They looked like that band. But Rob, these guys could just shred. They would just melt face. And it was like, are you serious? And yeah, they were just a local fixture and everybody liked those guys. But I'm trying to think what other Jersey guy, I don't know. For me, growing up, I loved all the new wave stuff. Duran Duran, Modern English, Talk. Just so many great bands.
That stuff still sounds great today when it comes on the radio. It sounds old, but it still sounds fresh and exciting. It's something magical about it. I don't know what it is.
I agree. And I think, it's so funny. I think people have just shit on the music of the 80s as if it was trite. It was that. But in hindsight, after the 90s came, you would look back on some of this music and go, this is really good stuff, really melodic.
Yeah, you show me any better melodies.
Yeah. Even like, even bands that weren't huge here, but like Echo and the Bunnymen, stuff like that was so freaking good. Joy Division, Susie and the Banshees, Bauhaus. There were so many great bands. Yeah, and I love it. That's why I'm in bands now. And that seems to be like what everyone likes to come out to hear is 80s and 90s music, And just because it does, it's got just a real energy to it. And like you said, there's so much music today. I love discovering new stuff, but sometimes I don't even know where to begin to find this new stuff.
Just bouncing from one thing to the next. You don't have time to soak it all in. It makes you wonder as you're growing up, how much time you actually spent listening to that album and how many times it took that song to sink into your head.
Oh yeah, you would just burn grooves through it on your vinyl. Can't even tell. I don't think I have an album that doesn't have just scratches all over it. I was glad to get rid of my vinyl, because it's just like, why do I want to listen to all these shitty albums? To me, they would be shit because I totally trashed them.
Probably worth a fortune now if you'd have kept hold of them.
I think more than the actual album, I think the cover. So I still have a bunch of those. So who knows? Maybe I'll take a peek. I still have that Foreigner album. I know that. You got to keep the first one, man. Yeah.
I got to ask, and you said you don't like Bon Jovi, so this might be a wild card. You grew up in Englewood and Fair Lawn, New Jersey, I believe.
Yeah.
Both of those places are only a short distance from Paramus, New Jersey.
That was my first job ever, was in Paramus Park.
Okay.
I worked at a mall. I used to help make the holiday decorations. And then come Christmas, I'd be a guy like up on a ladder hanging balls on a tree. Yeah, I was like 13 years old. And I think Paramus Park, that might have been like one of the first indoor malls in America. I think there's history there. I don't know. I don't care enough to look into it, but if you do, go for it.
The only reason I ask, one of my favorite bands are from Paramus, New Jersey, and that's a band called Trickster. They're around my age, probably a year or two older than me.
Trickster. Is there a guy named Slaughter in that? Is he like one of the...
There was a band called Slaughter with a singer called Mark Slaughter.
There's a band called... Yeah. I don't know Trickster. I'll have to listen.
Yeah, they came around the same time as Slaughter, around they were dubbed as the new kids on the block of hard rock and all that kind of thing.
There's another guy from that area. He was from a town, and maybe you know this band, but he was from Northvale, New Jersey. His real name is Billy Massey. And he used to go by Billy something. He's the lead singer, Stormtroopers of Death, SOD.
I know that name, yeah.
Yeah, those guys were just loud and crazy, but I used to go swimming in that guy's pool. He was like 2 years older than me, and he was nuts. He would just jump out of his second-story window like, I'm Bruce Lee. He was nuts. So when we heard he became the lead singer of this punk band in the 80s, we're like, yeah, perfect. No one was surprised. But Billy, he goes by Billy something. I'll figure it out.
When did you start your first band? Now, I don't know if this is Google messing around with me, but did you have a band called Tupac Habit?
No.
That's weird. That's Google messing with us then.
Wow, Tupac Shakur or
No, Tupac as in pack of cigarettes.
Like 2 packs.
Yeah. It's not a bad name, actually, Tupac Habit.
Right? I used to have a 2-pack habit, for sure. I was easily 2 packs a day.
So what was your first band then? Let's get the facts straight.
Oh my God. I was in so many stupid high school bands. And I think everyone in Jersey was in a band, at some point. But I used to sing for the bands. I didn't really play drums for bands until later. So I think the first band I was in high school was called Prophecy. And that was just a heavy metal cover band. And then the next band I was in high school, and these guys, and to this day, everyone in this band has gone on to do great things in music. We were called Fallen Angel because I think every high school had a band called Fallen Angel. But these guys, they're professors of music now. One guy, Al Markel, is touring with Sugar Ray, just really great musicians. And a few years ago, I was raising money for this Leukemia Lymphoma Society, a charity that I'm a part of. And we went back there and kind of got the old band back together. And that was just a dream come true. I mean, it looked like an ad for, Viagra, bunch of old guys playing it. But everyone was just amazed, oh my God. And we just kind of picked up where we left off. And it was really great. And then quickly I was in a Grateful Dead band called Jerry's Kids. Can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Can't have a band called Jerry's Kids, even though it was with the G. And then, in this band called Get Off My Lawn right now. And then 2 other bands that I just started with called Jacked and another one called 2 for the Show. And again, we make $1. We make $1 at every gig. And we do stuff for charity. But yeah, no one's looking to get rich from this. We just want our gas covered and we're good to go.
You mentioned the band Get Off My Lawn. Did I see a photo of you guys with Frankie Benali of Quiet Riot?
Oh my God, yeah, he signed my drum set. Yes.
Nuts.
Dude, honestly, one of the nicest human beings I'd ever met in my life. And he played my set after, and he loved my kit. And his wife at the time, Regina, just really, really great people. And, because I loved all that stuff growing up. Quiet Riot, Twisted Sister, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, all that. The louder, the better. And I loved him, man. He just beat the shit out of every drum set he met.
Did he just happen to be at a show?
What happened was a buddy of ours, he was doing a pilot for a new talk show. And the guy's name is Scotty Schwartz. the kid who licked the pole in the Christmas Story. Anyway, so he was doing a new thing and he had several guests, and one was Anthony Michael Hall and Richard Pryor's daughter and Frankie. Yeah, so we just got to hang out with him backstage, and yeah, I was totally fanning out. And it's so funny because I go to so many of these conventions like Comic-Cons, and I feel bad. People always say, who do you geek out on? Or, who are you a nerd for? I don't have a lot because I work with a lot of these people too. But like musicians, I go nuts for musicians and athletes. To me, like those are the things I get crazy about.
Do you think that's because they're in like a different, obviously you're a musician as well, but they're in a different field? Whereas like you're in the acting world, so you're familiar with these people.
Yeah, and I know how easy it is. I'm not fooled. But no, music, I know how difficult it is, and I know how great it is, and I know what a gift it is, to give to people. And so I'm like so appreciative of any great musician because I know it goes into that, and it's a level I'll never get to. And so I really admire that. And same thing with sports too. I'm like 4'11", not really, but everybody grew and I didn't. And so I just couldn't be parts of sports anymore. I was a big athlete until then, until like right after puberty, which happened about 30 minutes ago. Finally.
But you came right out of the gate when it came to movies, and you was straight away with some big stars. You landed an audition and getting a role in the Michael J. Fox movie, Bright Lights, Big City. And did I get it right? You even did a read-in with Michael himself.
Yeah.
Was that daunting for like being first time trying out? Because he was one of the biggest stars of the 80s.
Honestly, Rob, I knew who Michael J. Fox was, but I didn't watch a lot of TV growing up. If it was a musician, I would have known. I knew he was the guy from Back to the Future, and that was it basically. And I knew he was, like my size.
I got him. We're on a level.
Well, yeah, I just signed with an agent, and they had kept calling me like, "Oh, will you audition for this and that and that?" And I kept saying no because I just wanted to finish my junior year of college at least. And then she called during that summer after my junior year and said, "Do you want to audition for Bright Lights, Big City?" And it's funny because I just read the book. I said, "Oh my God, that's such a great book. What part?" And she goes, "Oh, you would be the brother. You would be Jamie's brother." And I'm looking in the book and go, "Oh, no. He's a big dude. It says even like he fills a door frame, with his stature." And she goes, "Well, Michael J. Fox would be your brother. And I think it would be a good mix, So yeah, sure, Doc." So I said, "Yeah, let's do it." And so sure enough, they flew me in I flew in actually to New York and read for a casting director, a British lady, Mary Calhoun from Calhoun Casting. And then she said, "Oh, you're adorable. Do you want to read with the director?" And I said, "Sure." And I read with Jim Bridges, who directed The Paper Chase and just countless other great movies. And I was such a fan of his. I was actually more nervous like reading in front of Jim Bridges than because then they said, "Hey, do you want to read with Michael?" I said, "Bring him in, let's get this over with." And so, I did my final reading, and Michael really liked a sports jacket that I had on that I paid like $1, like at Salvation Army. And he's like, "Hey, Schlatt, man, I tell you, if you give me that jacket, you could be in this movie." I'm like, "Dude, it's yours." And he says, "No, you don't have to give me your jacket, but I want you in the movie." And like 2 days later, I'm on set. It was like that. I literally like 2 days later signing contracts and got a little paycheck, which is odd to be paid for acting. With that paycheck, Rob, I bought a nice 10-speed bicycle. And yeah, I mean, to me, it was like the coolest thing ever. And he was just, I can't even tell you, just the nicest guy. He totally treated me like a little brother, arm around me every day. He was just so great. And yeah, I mean, for that to be my first experience, I couldn't have asked for a better introduction into the business. And here's something that's true. We shot a couple scenes in upstate New York that didn't make it into the movie. We shot a bunch of things that didn't make it into the movie, but that's just par for the course. But it's extra days to hang out with fun people. And so we were coming back and he said, "Hey, Charlie, are you going to Daly's tonight?" And so I said, yeah, sure. I guess I'll meet you there. And they go, "Okay, great. We'll see you at Daly's." And so I didn't know what Daly's was. I thought it was a bar. So I'm looking in the yellow, back then, we had yellow pages, and I'm looking for like a Daly's bar close to West End or to Central Park West where I was staying. And there's like 100 of them. So I like went to about 7 of them that night. It was just like old bar flies and it was just a bunch of drunk. So I came home, and then the next day we were working together, and he said, "Hey, I thought you were going to be at Daly's last night." And I go, "I couldn't find it. I didn't know which one it was." "What are you talking about?" So I said, I didn't know which bar. He goes, no, dude, Daly's is when you see the film that we shot the night before. And it's at a movie theater that, didn't I tell? I was like, oh no, I had no idea. So that's when I learned what dailies were.
You just wandering around New York.
Yeah, just look at going into every Irish bar. Dailies, O'Dailies, Dalios, Yeah.
Brilliant. So you've already worked with Michael J. Fox. Who else did you cross paths with or maybe audition against? 'Cause you starred with Pauly Shore in 18 Again.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's funny. On the Bright Lights Big City, I have no idea who auditioned for it. I did know, I found out that I did replace a wonderful actor, a guy named Chris Collette, or Collet, I guess, Christopher Collet, he goes by. And yeah, such a sweet, sweet guy. But listen, we've all been replaced by somebody at some point in our lives. So I went back to Ithaca, New York to finish a play that I was able to do. And during that, and I got that audition for 18 Again. And again, that was like, it was just me. I just went to New York City to be put on videotape. And then they sent it out. And then the next day, they flew me out to LA to audition with the director and the producer and all that stuff. But I never had to sit on a couch next to, other talented guys. Not until later. That's when I really, when you start going out now and doing this, then you go, oh, wow, yeah, it's this guy. I mean, one of my first auditions was for, before I had an agent, was for a movie called 3 O'Clock High.
I remember the poster for that one. I never seen the film, but I always remember the poster.
It was a great poster. But that was my first audition for anything, but I didn't have an agent. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I didn't get this thing. That and the fact that they went with someone really talented. So I get this script because somebody had seen me in a play in upstate New York. And they brought me to the casting people, Nancy Nair, and they said, you got to see this guy, whatever. So I auditioned. They screen tested me 3 times. But I remember sitting next to, there was a guy named Jay Underwood from The Boy Who Could Fly.
I remember the film. Yeah.
He was the boy who could fly. And I had just seen that movie by myself. It was the first movie I ever went to by myself in Ithaca, New York. And I loved it. So he was there, a kid named Corey Haim.
I was just going to ask you if you ever did anything with the two Corys.
Right there. Corey was there. Richard Tyson, who ended up doing the movie, but he didn't, not for my part. He was for the bully. But no, here's a funny story. Talking about the Coreys, many years ago, one of the first movies I was ever offered without having to audition or anything, I had a meeting with a guy named Greg Beeman, who directed a movie called License to Drive.
One of my favorites, mate.
So it was originally titled To Live and Drive in LA.
Right.
That was the original title. I probably still have the script somewhere. And I was like, oh, this seems like a pretty fun movie. But also, at that time, I was doing 18 Again. So I was playing an 18-year-old, and I thought it was weird to play somebody younger. So I remember meeting with the director, and we kind of talked about that. And I said, well, and who would be the other guy? And he goes, well, Corey Feldman. And I said, oh, okay. When I got home, I called my agent. I said, I don't want to work with that dude. Is that terrible? Is that bad of me?
You were saying how you felt.
I wasn't a fan. But I just felt no, because he wanted to work with maybe River Phoenix or something like that. I was like, I don't know, man. It was bad enough I was going to go down in age, but, I don't know. But it was the original, and I never saw the movie, and it could be brilliant for all I know.
I mean, it's a great cast in that film. Richard Mazur, Carol Kane.
There's great people in it, but this was before that, it was okay, it would be you and Corey. That might have been the first Corey movie, right? That might have been the first thing they did as Corey's.
Well, they'd done Lost Boys together.
Oh, okay. So no regrets.
No.
There's a movie that maybe I should have done. I don't know if I should have. I really, like I said, I don't have many regrets about things I haven't done. But there was another film that was offered to me called Loverboy. Patrick Dempsey. And he's a pizza delivery guy, and he has sex with all the older moms or the women in town. And I do remember reading this thing, and I thought, it reads like a porno. It kind of reads like there was a lot of sex. There was a lot of this and that. And I just thought, oh, and I think I was kind of scared to do it, to be honest with you. I didn't, I wasn't kind of ready to be naked on film or anything like that. It was and also because, my parents are still alive. I don't want them seeing me naked. Yeah. There's a lot of things you don't do because of family and whatever,
Was your family supportive of you doing acting?
Oh, totally. Yeah. My dad, he's just a blue collar guy, but was a singer. He loved the arts. He still does. He's alive. My mom passed several months ago, but he would always take us to Broadway plays. We were always doing that. He was very musical. He was, talk about coming home with a new album. He would come home with a new album and you would just sit there and listen to Paul Williams for like 60 minutes with your dad. And it was great. He just brought home like really, really good music. So, he made me fall in love with all of that stuff. And even like the old movies with Jimmy Cagney and stuff like that.
So when you started working with like George Burns and Dick Van Dyke, he was impressed.
Yeah. And I knew everything about George Burns, to be honest with you, just because he was a part of my culture, because of my grandparents. They loved him. And, honestly, Rob, like looking back, I was so happy, like, hey, I'm going to get this role and I get to work with George Burns. In hindsight, it's so great that I got to work with my parents' hero and my grandparents' hero. Because it's more than just saying, hey, my grandkid has a job in a movie. They got to say, he's working with the master. He's working with George, And the same thing with Dick Van Dyke. I did a series with him for like a million years. And that was such a great, and for my wife too, because she loved Dick Van Dyke. That's like her adoptive grandfather. But I was so glad to get that for everybody else, really. It was nice.
Over here in the UK, you gained a huge amount of attention starring alongside Kylie Minogue in The Delinquents in 1989. Was that your first time visiting the UK when you began doing press for that film?
Yeah. It was my first time in Australia. We were there for like 3 months. I loved it. I mean, I loved every second of being there. And then, it was the press tour. I think that was the first time. Yeah, I've been to London a few times now, but that was my first time there. Yeah, it was for the press tour of that. We did a thing in London and another show in Newcastle.
I think you're on Breakfast TV over here.
Yeah.
I think you were featured in some of like the UK teen magazines and all that kind of stuff.
That was like a crazy, the press there was really crazy at that time. I don't know if they're still like that, but it was like, if you had this much celebrity, they went nuts. It was crazy. And working with Kylie, it was like, because here, someone, when I first got the offer, my agent had said, hey, you get this offer to do this movie in Australia with Kylie Minogue. And I said, who's he? Because first of all, that wasn't even a name back then. Like nobody had the name Kylie. I didn't know, we just didn't know who she was here in the States. And no, it's a girl.
You say Kyle MacLachlan?
Kyle has been a big name. Yeah, is that who I'm working with? No, Kylie Minogue. Anyway, but no, she was lovely. But I had no idea like what I was stepping into. It was like working with one of the Beatles. It really was. There was just a lot of fanfare around her. And I have to give her kudos because, was she like 21 at the time? If that, that's a lot to handle at that age. Especially 40 years ago or 30 years ago, however many years ago, now, 21-year-olds are a little bit more savvy. They're a little bit more mature than we were.
I think they get looked after more by like the machine. If you want to call it the machine, it's more in the machine's priority to look after their artists.
100%, unless you're a kid on a Nickelodeon show. But no, you're right. But I will say, I think she was very graceful. I think she handled a lot of it with grace. But I could also tell it was tough for her as well. Never really having that chance to relax and eat a meal privately or quietly. So I get that. And me, on the other hand, I was like, hey, isn't this great? Look, we're getting all this free stuff. It was just fun. I was just some kid from Jersey thinking this is freaking on. Wait, we don't have to pay for SeaWorld? This is great.
I want to show you this. I have this copy of TV Guide.
Hey, I know that guy.
I believe it was Zach Galligan of Gremlins fame who said that even though when he was in like a huge film like Gremlins, it wasn't until he was on the cover of the TV Guide that he really witnessed fame. He was in some random TV movie, but once he was on TV Guide, that kind of solidified him. When was the time for you when you felt things really blew up? Was it like landing a role in a long-running show like Diagnosis Murder? Or when did you kind of experience like, wow, this is next level?
The Ferris thing, when that first happened out here, that was like a big thing, but it like fizzed out quickly because it was a horrible show. But, that was like the first time, because TV was just crazy. It's one thing to have film and whatever, but you could do a really successful movie, but a lot of people haven't seen it. So there's still some anonymity, people would recognize you from like the Tonight Show or whatever. And okay, whatever. So people sort of followed you from, the tabloids and People magazine or whatever. But with the Ferris thing, I didn't like that very much because, you'd be walking down Melrose and hey, Ferris! It's like, and I really just I didn't enjoy it at all. So I don't know. There was it's a good question, Rob, and I wish I could answer it better, but there was never like that one moment. I guess I remember seeing a big ad on Sunset Boulevard and like in a billboard for 18 Again. And I thought that's really kind of cool. And it was like right after I'd been at a party for George Burns' 91st birthday.
So a lot's happening all at once. Like, wow, things are really picking up speed.
Yeah. So it was really tough to compute all that, to say, okay, what's happening here? It's really odd because also I was just at my old college. I was just at Ithaca College recently visiting old professors and friends. And I said, the one thing they teach you in college is how to fail. Like had I failed right out of college, perfect. I would have been so equipped for all of that, eating ramen noodles and, living with 7 other guys in a 1-bedroom, whatever. I could do that. But they never tell you like, hey, you might actually succeed. And these are the things that, are going to take you off course. You got to stay focused. So a lot of that, because also in college, in academia, in the acting world there, you get to play so many different things. Old men, young girls in a wheelchair. And I was that guy. I was like the character actor. I would do like all the crazy stuff. And then all of a sudden, you come into Hollywood. Now you're this guy. You're whatever they see you as, unless you're brilliant like a Gary Oldman or, you know what I mean? You don't always get that chance to be something completely different. So I kind of miss that. So you get kind of caught up in like what they call a career as opposed to just a job that you love. And so I was able to kind of get back to that, later on. Now I just kind of do things because I like doing it.
Nice thing to wake up to be doing something you want to do and enjoy doing.
Oh, it is. And, listen, and there's still times, where there are things I want to do that I don't get. There's a lot of those. It was funny. My kids never liked if I was recognized, and it was mostly by like older people because of diagnosis murder. We had like a very old, demographic. And they would come up to me at a table and say, "Doctor, can you take my pulse?" And my kids are like, "Dad, you're not a doctor. What's going on?" It's like, I'm on a show where I play. And they hated it. But then it was like maybe about 10 years ago, they said, we kind of want you to be fancy again. And so I said, yeah, okay, let's see what we could do here. So I've done a few independent movies since. I pop up here and there and like 3 films that will be coming out very shortly.
I was blown away to learn you landed the role as the voice of E.T. in the holiday reunion shot a couple of years ago.
I was too.
I think it was Xfinity in the US, but they rebranded it for Sky TV here in the UK.
Yeah, and it's really sweet. It's a brilliant 5-minute film that they did.
It's legit as well. It's like the music,
dude,
Spielberg signed off on it.
Spielberg was in the studio like while I'm recording.
No.
Oh yeah, dude. And it is so funny because there's a French guy who was like the director who was telling me, "Oh, say it this way," but he would say it like with this French accent. I was like, I can't do it because you're doing it, but like instead of Elliot, it was Elliot, like little thing like goes, oh, there's a little, oh, you're right. And that was like the one job I did not want to shit the bed on because I grew up just loving E.T.
Do you remember when you first saw it?
Oh, yeah. I was 16 years old. I took Amy Gutman out on a date. We went to Houlihan's for like an early dinner, and then we went to the Highway Theater where we saw E.T. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. She was a senior. I was a junior in high school. And she was like 5'10". She was a tall girl.
So you was like Elliot and Erica Eleniak, which is standing on the thing with all the frogs going around.
Totally. It's so funny because like normally in an audition like that, they'll like throw out the net to kind of like the voiceover community, like the animation guys. And that's why like when they said, "Oh, do you want to, you have this audition for this ET thing?" And I thought, oh, they're just going to find somebody who's like really good.
You keep putting yourself down.
Because I'm a realist also. I know I know guys that are just like, vocal jukeboxes. They do everything, anything. And those are the guys who do everything. And it's not me, I mean, sometimes, yeah. But they just went out to like actors. They just went out to everybody. And so I said, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And then before I know it, they're like, "Oh, you got a callback for this ET thing." There were like 2 callbacks for it. There was like some hoops to jump through. And then finally I was like, "Oh, you're the guy." And I was like, "So I'm the official voice?" And they're like, yeah. And yeah, that session, I came to Rob. I was nervous, but like so joyful too. Because I'm not an impersonator. I could do little things here and there that are, whatever. That like, at a party, I'm that guy. But to be like a match to something, I didn't, I never like even did the impersonation, like, at a party or whatever. It's not something, "Oh, do you do ET?" Okay, yeah. So I think sometimes going into something like without any reservations sort of helps. Like, okay, do this guy. Okay, and you just do it without thinking about it. And I think that's what happened with the ET thing. I just love that character so much. I just kind of channeled him. But no, what they put together, that 5-minute film, I think was so beautiful. It was perfect. It was like a perfect cap.
It isn't a commercial. You could just play that on its own.
They never mention the product. They never mention any of it. It just happens to be in the background.
That's almost like you would think like suicide marketing, but on the flip of it, it works.
It could have gone south big time, and it could have been just an abuse of a character. Because, that's one character that, Spielberg is really, really, he handles that with kid gloves. I mean, he really adores it and treasures it. So for him to sign off to say, yeah, you're the voice, and yeah, we're going to make a 5-minute thing for Xfinity. Henry Thomas was so beautiful in that. I mean, he was just so good. Everybody.
Have you and Henry met at a convention or anything?
Oh, yeah, we did. Because there was like an E.T reunion in San Antonio, Texas, like maybe 2 years ago. And the other guy, Matthew, the guy who was actually in the E.T suit, he's an amputee. He is missing his legs. And they put him in that little suit, so when E.T is drunk and he falls down, that's him. And he's such a sweet, sweet guy. But yeah, so we all did this thing, just signing Funkos and whatever. It was super nice.
Charlie, before we go, I've got one more question for you.
Yes, sir.
I want you to time travel to a Friday night in the late 80s or early 90s, back in New Jersey, and you head into the video store.
Okay.
What movie soundtrack do you have on your Walkman? And what 3 tapes are you going to rent for the weekend?
Okay. Soundtrack-wise, during that time, and even when I came out to do the Delinquents, I think I listened to this soundtrack every night. I don't know if it's really the soundtrack as much as it is the score, but it was Ennio Morricone's The Mission, which is like one of the most beautiful pieces of music I think he had ever written for any movie. And you could always, hear his stuff. He's been in Quentin Tarantino stuff, and he's just so smart and so great and so Italian. But soundtrack, well, that's like when there's a bunch of different songs. This just came to me. I used to love the Pretty in Pink soundtrack.
Well, there you go. That's all your British new wave stuff.
I was a big Psychedelic Furs fan, always. So I loved that. But the soundtrack to Repo Man.
Ooh.
With Secret Agent Man and Suicidal Tendencies was on that.
Great one.
Yeah, I probably listened to that a ton. And believe it or not, there was another soundtrack that I used to listen to. I was like a big soundtrack junkie, but Midnight Express had like some crazy good music in it. I couldn't even tell you who did it, but I used to listen to that stuff all the time. And I also like Peter Gabriel. I probably played through the soundtrack to Birdie because that was a lot of stuff from the Security album, just sort of like transposed for the film. But to this day, I'm going off on a tangent, but Peter Gabriel and Randy Newman are my 2 favorite human beings when it comes to music, writing songs. I just think they're the most poetic, prolific writers of all time.
So what films you going to pick when you get to the video store? Okay,
so video-wise, I'm probably going to pick a video that I haven't like seen in a while, or a movie that wasn't like accessible a lot. I know I picked up The Wall a few times in Floyd. I don't think I remembered much of it when I saw it in the theater. I might have been a little messed up. I just remember him shaving his nipple going, oh no, this is the worst movie ever. I've probably seen that a few times. I think, you know what? I probably saw Spinal Tap more than any other movie.
Nice.
Yeah.
What do you think the sequel's going to be like?
You know what? I'm hopelessly optimistic. I just think because they struck gold the first time, and since then, Christopher Guest is still like one of my favorite filmmakers. He's so fucking good. And then the other one would be, the other movie I loved, was Raging Bull.
Okay. When did you first see Raging Bull?
Probably when it came out. I think that was like 1980. I think I was like a freshman. I might have been a freshman in high school when that came out. And I just remember I had a buddy who just passed away recently, Rob Lapuzzo. And he was just this funny Italian guy. And he and I would always just act. I was always Joe Pesci. He was always Rob De Niro, and you fuck my wife. What are you talking about? I fuck your wife. That's ridiculous. You fuck my wife. I ain't gonna look at you, you fat bastard, you. You eat like there's no tomorrow. Like that was our thing. We would just go back and forth. You give me all the answers, but you never give me the right answer. That was a lot of fun. And to this day, I still think it's a comedy. I think it's a comedy.
That must be great for you to put that movie on now and thinking of your friend.
Oh, yeah. And it totally still holds up, too, which is tough. How old, am I allowed to ask how old you are, Rob?
Yeah, I turned 50 last year.
Oh, okay. And so I'm 59. There are just a few days ago. And there's so many movies that we saw growing up that it's so funny that you think hold up, but they don't. There's just stuff that just... I don't know, just because it was, culturally important at a time.
Strangely, you mentioned Pretty in Pink soundtrack. I used to love that as a film. I watched that so many times. And I rewatched it about a year ago. I was like, this isn't as good as I remember.
Yeah, the Ducky thing doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, he's a bit of a dick in it.
He's a bit of a dick. Ducky the Dicky. He was. Yeah, it's just, and a lot of John Hughes stuff does hold up pretty good.
It was weird because I kind of flipped. I didn't like Some Kind of Wonderful that much when I first saw it. But now when I rewatch it now, I like it a lot more.
I loved that movie. That was one of my favorite John Hughes movies. And and Craig Sheffer was in that. He was great. Everybody. And it was so funny because I remember seeing an interview years and years ago with Eric Stoltz. This was like his new, this was his trajectory. This was like his first big thing. And he was saying how odd he thought it was. He goes, I got cast to do Some Kind of Wonderful because I was this goofy looking redheaded guy, whatever, with freckles. Then I show up to do the movie and all of a sudden they darken my hair. And they turned me into like this really kind of good looking guy. He wasn't happy with that at all, and it makes sense because now you watch the movie and you go, yeah, like you don't buy him really as a nerd. Mm-hmm. You do, the movie's sake. And yeah, there's good looking nerds. But Mary Stuart Masterson, how cute was she?
Ridiculous.
Was her name Styx or something like that?
Watts, as in Charlie Watts.
That's what it was. Yeah, I knew it had to do something with the drummer. Yeah, but she always had the sticks. Yeah, she was unbelievable.
Charlie, thank you for speaking to me, mate.
And Rob, I'm sorry, I know you were ending, but I'm going to see you May 31st?
Absolutely, yeah. We're hanging out all day.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Chris is going to be there, I'll do the shop with. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And you're going to be in the karaoke the night after.
Things I do for Amanda.
Have you got your go-to list?
I may or may not have given her a couple ideas of things that I might be able to sing. Who knows? I'm not a big karaoke guy, but I figure, listen, when in Manchester.
Hey, the place looks amazing as well. You're going to visit our place on the Saturday and then the Fab Cafe on Sunday.
That Fab Cafe looks amazing. Yeah. It does. It's such a cool vibe. And I'm like really excited to be out there. So I'm excited. I'm going to see Kylie. I'm going to see you guys. It's going to be a nice trip out there. And I've never been to Manchester.
Love it. Love it. Well, I'm excited to see you. It's going to be great.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate your time. A lot of fun to chat.
All right. You too, Rob. Thanks, man.
Mega thanks to Charlie Schlatter for joining me on this episode of the Straight to Video podcast. It was a real treat to connect with him prior to his visit to our 80s video shop in Alfreton, Derbyshire on Saturday the 31st of May. He'll also be appearing at Manchester's Fab Cafe the following evening, doing a karaoke meet and greet with Amanda Summers Music, so hopefully some of you can get the chance to meet up with him whilst he's in the UK. We still have a few tickets left for the exclusive movie screening at our shop on the 31st, so check out all the info at our website, which is 80svideoshop.co.uk, or just follow for updates on our social media pages simply at 80svideoshop. So that's all for this episode of the show. Whilst this is the first episode in a while, I do have a bunch of chats already recorded or scheduled, so expect a run of more regular episodes coming over the coming weeks. Or why not? Check out over 300 episodes still available at stvpod.com. But most of all, thanks so much for listening whenever you can. The support is amazing, and until we chat again, make sure to always be kind, please rewind and unwind, and I'll speak to you all real soon.